Good morning, everyone, and sorry for keeping you waiting for a few minutes, but here we are. Welcome to the fourth thematic webinar of the Future Resilience Project that is called Rethinking Social Integration for Resilient Societies. I am Matthias Valveris. I'm the coordinator of the Future Resilience Project, a European-funded project that is looking to enhance societal resilience across different labs that we have set up in Europe. The project is actually running through these 10 labs different techniques and methodologies of policy testing, and they are working based on different concrete challenges like migration, social integration, but also about access to housing, climate change, healthcare access, and so on and so forth. And from these challenges, the different labs, they are looking for building solutions that could actually increase preparedness for the future and develop solutions that could enhance societal resilience at local level. So today we have a series of speakers with us that will give us some expert experiences, first-hand experiences in their context from projects that they have been running. And these webinars usually look to share these good experiences with the labs and with the wider public, so to learn how different actions could actually lead to more resilient solutions. And today the focus would be on social integration. And I would like to give the word to Yannis Tsikaris from the Regional Development Institute at the Pantheon University, who will give a brief introduction to the webinar. And then, of course, we go through the different speakers that we have today. Just a quick note, you have the questions and answer button and the chat, so feel free to pose any questions and we will go through a question and answer moment after the different presentations. So Yannis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Matthias. First of all, I would like to thank the participants, but I am extremely thankful to the speakers, to the invited speakers, because they responded in a very short notice and they tried to do the best in order to be here and to provide insights from a very critical issue that is related with the participation, ways of participation, ways of engagement with an issue that has to do with the migration. So I'm really very happy that they managed and are here with us. And the topic we are going to discuss today, it is a very interesting part of the issue of migration, and has to do with the relationship between participation and integration, how the local people are involved in joint initiatives, or take initiatives in order to integrate migrants into the locality and into the functioning of the local community. We, as part of the project, of the Future Resilient Project, are involved as partners, and I am talking on behalf of the Regional Development Institute, which is a research institute in Greece, and we have taken also responsibility for the lab that has to do with HEOS. As we know, HEOS had been one of the entrance points of refugees in Greece, and especially in 2015 we have a culmination of refugees inflows into the area, And what makes this case very specific is that we're talking about an island, and island and insularity play a critical role when we are talking about a locality. So insularity makes a big difference, and at the same time, it's very important. It is a very serious challenge because Chios Islands could be as a lab, I could say, or how in a very restricted area can incorporate, can take actions in order to engage all these issues, not in the locality, I mean in terms of being physical part, but in terms of being part and connect and building bonds, I could say in social capital terms, building bonds with the local people. Our experience is very rich. We have organized webinars. We have conducted interviews with stakeholders. The issues that have been raised are very important. As an example, one of the issues has to do with the governance of policies that have been applied in this specific area. The governance has to do with the multi-tier and multi-actors involvement. So in order to see coordination of actions for different tiers of government and different actors at different levels, it is a complex issue. However, it's very interesting part of our work. So I close now. Today we have the opportunity to invite external to the project people in order to provide some insights on the way that they are working through their very rich and very rich experience in this subject. So I welcome, I think has already the third one has also joined. Okay, is this here because I cannot hear, I cannot see
Yes.
where.
Yes, Yanis. Nora is here.
Okay, so Nora is here. So Nora is going to start with an overview of the European perspective of the issue. And then Lefteris Papagiannakis, with a great experience in the field, will provide some insights through the angles of an international perspective, however, with a local focus. And at the same time, Dionysia, a very well experienced colleague, we have worked a lot with Dionysia on the locality, and now she will provide evidence again through the angle of international organizations, however, how they are going down to practical implementation in a municipality of Athens, but also in the network of localities that are being collaborated for the implementation of policy. So thank you very much, and we can start. We have allocated 10 minutes, I think, Matthias, in order to be able to have a broader discussion with the participants in this event. So let's start with Nora. Nora, are you? Could you please start? 10 minutes. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, good morning. First of all, thanks for inviting me. The original information I received was 15, but I will try to be brief.
It's okay, also 15. Sorry.
Yeah, but I will keep it brief. I will just try if I can share my PowerPoint because it might be easier to follow. Yeah. It works for everyone, right? It's visible. Yes. Thanks. So just to clarify, I mean, we were, as you said, we were invited at very short notice, and I'm meant to give a bit of an introduction, but I won't be able to take the European perspective. We've been working in Germany, yes, from a more academic point of view, so I can say a few more general points, but just to set the expectations, I guess it will be more on the German case, and then we can contrast it with the Greek one. So what we have been doing is working on questions of social inclusion, cohesion, integration, but from the angle of resilience, which seems to be quite similar to the work others have been doing here. And what or how we came to this project was that we worked a lot on Ukrainian forced migrants arriving in Germany since 2022. And as you know, that has been a challenge for local governments, how to help them settle, how to respond to their needs, etc. And especially you mentioned the Greek islands, which have been a hotspot here. It's been mostly also municipalities who were the places of arrival and suddenly had to deal with these newcomers. And then in the German debate, there was often a framing around it's sort of a stress test and a crisis, and there are too many people coming. But what we were interested in from a point of view of resilience is to see, well, what is the actual crisis? It's not people arriving, it's how host institutions are able to respond or not, how their infrastructure is in place, how it can adapt, how it can be flexible to new needs, etc. So the way we saw integration was not so much people who arrive and have to adapt, but more a system pressure and how sort of, the ability of a system to maintain its functions when external shocks come and to respond effectively, but also flexibly to new requirements. Okay, I have to do it here. So just to give you a brief overview, we worked with 11 municipalities across Germany, obviously not representative, but giving us a glimpse at how conditions are in different parts of the country, east, west, also stronger and weaker regions economically and different sizes of city. And we did work with local governments in a very participatory research design, where we basically created like a dialogue forum where they could discuss their issues, and we moderated, but at the same time we could observe their discussions, and that's how we kind of came up with this analysis. And the local governments gave us the feedback that they found this a very helpful format because it helped them to reflect on their challenges, how they could deal with it, how other people did it, and see the bigger picture. What were they saying? What does it mean? Like, you talked here in the seminar about social integration, or you could also call it inclusion, but what are we talking about? When they were asked how it would look like these structures are resilient, their key point was it needs to be equal participation for everyone in the local community, no matter where they come from, if they have certain impairments, what age group they are, what their needs are, etc. So what does that mean in practice? Well, resilient infrastructure are those services which are needs-based and sufficient, because that was also a problem that often the capacities lacked, and in key areas of arrival. You cited a few already. Housing, then in the context of Ukraine, childcare was very important because, as you know, these were many women with young children arriving, education, schooling, but also further vocational training. That this was provided, but for the whole community, not just, oh, there's a new group, they need to get places in school, but that everyone had sufficient places. And they stressed at the same time that you need specific services which are oriented towards those who have specific needs, in these cases Ukrainians who might not master the language yet, or need specific orientation in the German system. But what we could see in reality, what's happening, not very surprising, capacities were very quickly exhausted in terms of housing, childcare, places available for language training, German, etc. But also that it was quite different in different localities, especially the urban-rural divide. That often there was more offer in rural areas, but fewer people coming because of network effects, because more jobs were available in cities where there, on the other side, was a housing shortage. And then what local governments also talked about, which is a particularity for the Ukrainians compared to other groups of refugees or migrants in general arriving in other countries, as I imagine would be in Greece, is that they were mostly privately housed. I mean, forced migrants beforehand often were in community, sort of in accommodation provided by the cities, like closed facilities, and here they were with private hosts. So it was very hard for local governments to even know how many people did arrive, what are their needs, because they weren't really like registering in the system in the beginning. And what they also talked about, which is a major pitfall in the German system at least, is that funding was then made available to respond to needs, but it was always very group specific. So there would be a fund where you could, for instance, create information in Ukrainian or Russian, or offer a specific course in German for language training, but just open to forced migrants from Ukraine. And local governments talked about how that kind of endangered social cohesion on a local level, because there were other groups who had the same needs, who might have already been living there for a while, trying to attend a German course, but not getting a place. And then these group newcomers came and were offered such quite immediately. So what we did in the next step is talking with those local governments about, so what do they need and how could we achieve to better respond to these conditions and improve them, essentially. And we talked not so much about the hard facts of like you need more funding, etc., because these are aspects which the central government has to provide, and that was not in their hands, but more on a governance level. What could local governments do to better organize their processes? And they identified a couple of driving forces, which were more on an institutional level, which I'll briefly present. So these are really the results of what local governments discussed, and we sort of bottom-up developed them. So first, they talked a lot about attitude. So to even have, or to even be able to improve conditions on the local level, they said it's important that all parts of local society, but also administration and the local political level, recognize that integration is a fundamental part of societal responsibility, and that you need to sort of sometimes shift the perspective of some people working on this issue, that you take a resource-oriented perspective of what these people can bring and not just what they lack when they arrive in Germany. For instance, that they don't speak the language fluently, so you need to sort of build a language level, that they are not able to attend the labor market, etc., but rethink a little bit what can they bring to the table. They also managed a lot that you need holistic approaches. I mean, as we know, if it touches different areas of social services and of government, they all work on their specific issue, but you need to somehow integrate that because it can be a transversal topic, how to deal with these needs. So some administrative units obviously deal specifically with integration, but they talked about how you need to take different people along and into the boat. For instance, if you have social planning or new housing build, to rethink the different perspectives and to actually talk more across units, which seems very obvious, but was not that easy for them in daily life. That they somehow set up communication structures in form of roundtables or specific committees who would regularly meet up and exchange so the information flows. And then they also talked about the institutional setup, that to ensure better communication, it's a precondition that you have a clear division of competences, but also transparency of that, because sometimes they talked about that there are certain departments which have expectations of what others could do or should do, or what civil society should contribute, but at the same time not being aware if this is even in their realm of competences or if they have the ability to do that. And to even manage this whole dialogue, you also need what was central, a coordination force. I mean, I can imagine this all sounds quite basic to you, but in the day-to-day life of those local governments, these structures didn't always exist. And they were also talking about how administrative culture should adapt a little bit, because at the moment, often it's like, oh, problem solving, managing, but not really thinking outside of the box. How can we shape this? How can we be creative? Last, what they talked about quite extensively as being necessary to respond to new needs flexibly was networking. I already mentioned it briefly internally across different administrative units, but also strategic cooperation with actors outside of the administration. Obviously, civil society is essential here, also volunteers who supported a lot when new waves of people arrive in a locality. But what often happens is it's seen as a sort of low-cost substitute when there's a bottleneck. But what was essentially said in our dialogues with stakeholders was, well, it needs to be a long-term cooperation, that everybody knows about the other's roles, competencies, that there are good working relationships, so they could be activated in the moment of pressure. Yeah, sorry. That was sort of the main points. I'm obviously happy to go through specific details. I was just wondering, there was one, for whatever reason, this sort of was not seen. That's why I was slightly confused because why the presentation is finished. So yeah, that was the institutional preconditions. I will just say 2 words about this and then I'll hand over the floor. So I talked about a little bit the institutional setup, how local governments thought they could improve their structures to be more resilient to shocks. But they also talked about a few other factors. One was essentially political backing. And you can imagine in an era where there's also right-wing forces rising, are you having a proactive stance toward integration and migration as a municipality or not? And that kind of delimits the field you can act in and how you act. And then essentially, obviously, time and resources being very critical in the sort of overall discourse, which connects to the political backing. Yeah, I'll leave it here, and I'm happy to answer questions later on after we heard about the Greek case. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nora. Very interesting and in a way, a very good contribution to our discussion. Let's organize how to proceed. Maybe we could have a short discussion, questions after each presentation. Is that right, Matthias? Or you think you should leave the discussion at the end?
Maybe we can have a panel directly at the end.
At the end, yeah. This is actually what we have planned. So thank you, Nora. And then we move to the next presentation. The next one in the program, I think it's Lefteris Papagiannakis. Lefteris Papagiannakis, as you have already seen, in the program, is the director for the Hellenic refugee. I cannot recall very well exactly what, but it's the director.
Greek Council for Refugees.
Council, thank you, Lefteris. A Council for Refugees with a scientific background, a social attitude, and a professional, I could say, activity in the field. And thank you, Lefteris, very much. And we are very keen to listen to your presentation. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me and the invitation. I will start by trying to present a bit the reality in Greece, and I will make also some comments on what compared to what is happening in other European cities. So I will use the example of Athens, as I have this experience of being a former deputy mayor for the city of Athens, dealing with issues of migrants and refugees in the period we called the refugee crisis of 2015. I use brackets because I disagree with the term crisis, but this is something that we can discuss later on. So Athens and Greece was called to manage a sudden increase in arrivals, what was called the crisis of 2015. Roughly 1 million people crossed into Greece going to Europe, especially in Germany. That's why the role of Germany and the German cities is so important during that specific period. And the Greek cities and Greece as a country had to adapt to a new reality that during these last 10 to 11 years has changed the characteristics of the country. I remind you that Greece was a transit country, people using it to cross and move on. And in 2016, Greece became a destination country because of what we call the EU-Turkey deal, the EU-Turkey Common Declaration, closing the borders, etc., etc. Most of you know what happened back then, but we also can come back to that. What is interesting to understand is when you hear about the example of different European countries and the role of local authorities and cities, you have to keep in mind that cities around Europe do not have the same competencies. So comparing them, it is a challenge, I would say. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it is a challenge because you need to understand culturally and historically how the cities and local authorities operate and their capacity. So in Greece, the capacity and the competencies of cities in the context of migration, reception, social inclusion of refugees, etc., is very, very limited. Not to say non-existent. Back then in 2014, 15, 16, etc., we tried to promote the role of cities and to discuss how cities could participate in the management of migration and how this should, should be set up. Dionysia Labiri will mention one specific example of what we did back then, explaining what the role of the Athens Coordination Center for Migrants and Refugees was and still is, and a number of other initiatives that we took as cities. But these initiatives, don't forget, because I'm coming back to my initial point, are based on political will and not in the change of competencies. Still, the cities in Greece do not have a competency, and still their intervention and their participation in any type of social inclusion efforts are based on the political will of the mayor that is in office. And the best way to understand that is to, I know that you cannot do it here, but if someone is interested, it is easy to look up what happened, is the change between the two different administrations from 2014 to 2019, and then the change in administration from 2019 to 2023, how the role of the city of Athens, for example, has changed. I disagree with what happened between 19 and 23, but it was a different mayor with a different political background, with a different political view. But you can clearly see the change in the approach. For example, and talking about the things that I know, there was no vice mayor following vice mayor on migrant and refugee affairs. There was only an executive council, meaning that the issue was brought down politically in the hierarchy of the city, depicting a willingness to change the approach of the city for these issues. With the change of administration, we now again have a vice mayor, which points out how the new mayor wants to deal and be involved in this context. So keep in mind the difference in competencies and also the fact that the political will of the mayor is quite important in the context of Greece. If you look up what is being done in other European countries, you have to understand that there is a different culture and there is a different historical evolution of the intervention and the role of cities in the context of social inclusion, especially for migrants and refugees. You cannot compare, for example, what is happening in Barcelona or in Spain in general with what is happening in Greece. You cannot compare Greece with Germany, as cities play a very, very important role in the process of social inclusion. I'm not commenting on the quality and if it's a good system or not. I'm just presenting a factual reality. All political choices have successes and failures, more or less, but there is a history behind it. So in the green context, we are still in the beginning of this type of discussion and intervention. A lot has to be done, but going back to what happened since 2015, I would say that a number of things have changed, culturally speaking. So people understand that when we talk about social inclusion and resilience, just to bring it back to the content of the project, these things are happening at the local level. Of course, you cannot expect one city to take responsibility for all other cities. Yes, Athens is the capital, it is the biggest municipality, and it plays a very important role. But if you see the role of Athens in the context of the region of Attica, which hosts 3.5 to 4 million people, roughly 40% of the population of Greece, you cannot expect change only by waiting on Athens to lead this change. The impact of Athens is very small if you take into account that in the region of Attica you have 66 municipalities. So waiting from one municipality to be able to affect the operational culture of a region as big as this one, it's not the right approach. So yes, Athens, as we did back then, had a very important role. We took the lead, we led by example. Other cities followed, fortunately, back then. But again, the change in the administration and who is mayor plays a very important role. And you can see the changes in policies when the mayor changes, because there is no continuity. This concept also needs to be pointed out because, we talk about resilience, we talk about consistency. Continuity is very important. And how we are describing the continuity in the administration. I'm not saying that all mayors should have the same political approach or agree on the same issues, but in baseline politics, like it's like resilience, or how do we do social inclusion, or how do we participate in the management of migration, or how do we deal with the climate crisis? It is very important to have at least some common ground rules. And unfortunately, this is also missing. And it's missing in the context of Greece again, because there is no national policy on social inclusion of refugees and migrants, meaning integration. There is no national policy on integration of migrants and refugees. We have been dealing with issues of migration with people with a migrant background, third country nationals, you can name them, you can call them however you want, for many, many years. But still there is no national policy. We have good practices for a number of years, but we remain at the level of good practices, and there is no national policy. If someone has, the curiosity to look over the national strategy on integration that is posted on the website of the Ministry of Migration and Asylum, it is a roughly 20-page document. I don't think that people who have been, working on migration could find something very satisfactory in this context. It is a very basic document linking essentially policies to funding and nothing more. There is no mention on local authorities, no mention of NGOs, etc., etc. So it's something that the Minister of Migration is willing to do, but in the context of the funding process, nothing more than that. And we are missing the horizontal intervention of all ministries, meaning the state mechanism. So we are thinking about migration as something that concerns only the Minister of Migration. And that's why we have also, in the context of managing migration, so many different ministries involved, which is also a point of discussion. Yesterday, NGOs had a meeting with the new commissioner on migration, Mr. Brunner, and one of the points he raised is that I met so many ministers dealing with the issue that seems a bit difficult to coordinate. So the border management process belongs, if it's terrestrial borders, to the police. If it's water borders, it belongs to the Ministry of Naval Affairs. If it's reception, it's the Ministry of Migration and Asylum, etc., etc., etc. In this very complicated context, you can imagine that local authorities with a very minimum, and I'm being nice here, competency or role, it is difficult for them to operate and have a concise policy. So we are missing the central guideline, we are missing the national policy, and in this very complicated and I would say also non-existent context, it is difficult to imagine that cities could have an effective role. If you link it to the questions of climate and then resilience, it becomes even more complicated. Athens has a resilience strategy since 2018, I think, and we also have a plan on the integration of migrants voted also by the Municipal Council in 2018 in the same context. Yes, it is a good strategy, more or less, taking into account the inexperience that we have back then. But how do you implement this strategy? This is another question. Do you have funding to do that? Since you don't have the competency, you need to find funding to do it in a different way. But it only concerns Athens. So as I mentioned, you cannot expect implementing a policy in Athens when the whole of the region of Attica is just one big municipality, basically, but without a metropolitan aspect in the governance and the administration. So a lot of points need to be clarified and changed in this context to have a more efficient local authority approach. So keeping in mind that local authorities across Europe have different competencies, different culture of administration, different historical evolution, and different roles, we need to understand that cities have been discussing in the context of migration and integration, etc., on their own for a number of years now. It is a huge cross-border discussion, and as you know, mobility doesn't know borders, and cities are avoiding the discussion on borders because borders do not concern them, and they try to collaborate and exchange good practices again. It seems that we have reached our limits, at least in Greece, and we need to think about a big change in the operational culture and the administrative operation of local authorities in order to adapt to the challenges of 2025 now. We were discussing the same things 10 years ago, but now we see the limitations of their role. So either a metropolitan approach for Athens, at least, and maybe Thessaloniki, either a change in the competencies and the strength of the cities around Greece is necessary in order to adapt to the modern challenges. So I can stop here and we can discuss after. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lefteris, for the insightful and also the comments you raised. I think they make us think about that, and we'll have the opportunity to discuss a bit later. So we are moving on, and go to the third invited speaker, Dionysia Lampiri. As I mentioned, Dionysia has a very close has worked very closely with the local level, with the local government, and in this respect, she has an experience not only from Athens, but also for the network of municipalities that are engaged in this, in the implementation of policy. Dionysia, thank you again very much for being here, and you can.
Thank you.
The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yannis. I think I will follow up on Lefteris's presentation and talk about a mechanism that we have built in the city of Athens over the last years that has been proven very resilient, and I will share my presentation in a second because of the things that also Nora mentioned earlier. The advantages and the positive things of this mechanism that I will present now are that it created an institutional memory inside the local government. So I think when we talk about resilience, this is something that we need to keep in mind, institutional memory, and also it has built capacities inside the local administration. And this is something that, despite the fact that, of course, we need the political will, as Lefteris mentioned, creating capacities inside the administrative, inside the local administration makes the city stronger, irrespective of the political will. So, and our mechanism is the proof of that, basically, because we continue to exist and to work uninterruptedly all these years. Let me. No. Sorry, 1 second.
Jan, are you trying to share the
I'm trying
presentation?
to open my presentation, but
Okay.
I don't know why it doesn't. You can only see, I see an icon, right? Or nothing?
No, we cannot see anything. If you have opened the file, have you opened the file?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then go on the top right corner besides microphone, where you will see share presentation. Share presentation, and then go to.
This is what I'm doing, but is it better now?
No, we cannot.
Let me try once more.
First, open is a PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint? I'm not sure, Matthias.
Give me one more. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, as alternative,
Matthias,
you
can
send
you-
it by email and we can share it.
Is Dionysia allowed to?
Yes, yes.
Okay, because sometimes it is
You have on the
centrally
top corner,
controlled.
you have camera, microphone, and
It
share
is centrally
buttons.
controlled here.
Share, yes, share.
And then you will need to select the exact window of the PowerPoint.
Now?
Yes, here we go. You may need to put
Okay.
it in full screen.
That's good.
Yes, I will.
We can see it now.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Yes, I think it's a bit slow, but yes, now it's working.
Yes,
Perfect.
it's
You
okay.
can go on.
Okay, perfect.
Diona. Yeah, fair
Okay.
enough.
Thank you. So I will talk about the Athens coordination, the City of Athens Coordination Center for Migrant and Refugee Issues, that has been working over the last years with the support of UNHCR and IOM in the context of a three-part collaboration with the City of Athens. What is the ACCMR? ACCMR is this coordination hub is the first and biggest coordination hub on migrant and refugee issues in Greece, and it has been recognized as a European best practice. As Nora mentioned earlier, we know that local government and local administration is in general rather inward looking. And what ACCMR has done over the years that has been working is that it has introduced a new model, an innovative bottom-up model that promotes this multi-level collaboration and makes local government more extrovert. So what we do is that we enable the exchange of information on what services exist and what activities exist in the City of Athens. And we connect all stakeholders at different levels that are active in integration, in providing integration services. At the moment, we have 182 members coordinating through the ACCMR hub. Most of them are local NGOs, but we also have migrant refugee communities. We have local administrative services, so specific services, people working in municipal clinics, people working in other social services on, let's say, gender issues, on housing issues, everything. We also have representatives from ministries participating in our work, and we also have UN and international organizations. What we do at ACCMR is our main work focuses on 4 areas. We map and we disseminate information on services and activities in Athens, and for that we have a very useful tool, which is a really useful digital platform that maps all services and activities in Athens. We identify through our working groups the needs of communities in Athens and organize targeted events. These activities, as you will see later on, are either to provide information to communities living in Athens, or to raise awareness on their needs, or to bring them closer with local populations in the neighborhoods of Athens. We also connect with central government. At the moment, we are working with the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Migration and Asylum, and Ministry of the Interior on other things. And also, as Yannis said, through the Cities Network for Integration, we liaise also with municipalities across Greece. And we work with municipalities that are interested in promoting integration and in strengthening their services and their institutions. So we work at ACCMR, we work on 2 levels. We work on a physical space. We have 4 working groups and 4 primary areas of action. The thematic areas that the working groups cover are labor market and skills development for third country nationals. We have education and integration in the Greek school, migration and gender issues, and also interculturality awareness and the communities of Athens. So the activities that need to be organized in order for local people to come closer with refugee and migrant communities, and also activities that raise awareness in the city. At the moment, we have over 200 professionals that meet on a monthly basis at ACCMR. Yesterday, we had a meeting of one of these 4 thematic working groups. And during these meetings, these 2-hour meetings, what we do is that we exchange information on what happens in the field, who are the people in need at the moment, what trends we observe in Athens, what changes we observe in these trends. So professionals that work on these different thematic areas share this information. And based on the trends that we identify, we plan activities in the city. And these activities can be either raising concerns at central government level or practical activities, as I will explain in a moment. The ACCMR digital platform, this is it's a unique mapping tool that is accessible to professionals because it is Greek and English only, not in refugee and migrant languages, that helps professionals and facilitates referrals by City of Athens social services to NGOs and vice versa, and other organizations that are active in the provision of services in the City of Athens. Through this really, really useful tool, here I have a QR code and you can scan it and see how we map activities specifically on employment, for instance. It's a really useful tool, both in times of, for everyday work, but also at times of emergency. If we have a very quick flow of a sudden flow of refugees, for instance, in the City of Athens, this is a very good tool that helps us very quickly mobilize all the actors that coordinate through ACCMR and provide easy information, easily and efficiently information to them. So, which are the main areas that we focus on? Integration into the labor market. We support this particular pillar of integration because it is a really important one. How we do that? Through our collaboration with NGOs, we organize special trainings to support employability. We organize every year a big job fair. So far, we have organized 4 job fairs. Over 100 companies have participated from all over Greece, and over 1,500 participants have gone through these job fairs and have been interviewed by companies working mainly in the field of tourism and other fields like logistics, etc. We couldn't do that if we didn't have this collaboration with NGOs that specialize in the provision of this type of employability services. We are very active at times of emergencies, as I mentioned before. We activated this CMR network in 2 cases, and it has been really useful for those working in the field. One case was when the COVID-19 lockdown happened, where we activated all our actors of the ACCMR network, and they informed us on how they adapted their services in order to cater for the needs of people, because some people started working online, some other people, shut their doors, so they needed to provide services over the phone. So we informed all stakeholders on that very quickly. But also when displaced Ukrainians arrived in Greece, in I think 1 week, we provided a very concise mapping of all the services specifically for Ukrainian people. So it was very easy for them through this mapping to know where to ask for information, where to ask for services. So this shows how this bottom-up approach that we have helps both the city and the NGOs and international organizations do their work better. Another aspect that we focus on is the integration in the Greek school. We organize trainings for information sessions. Again, when Ukrainian parents came to Greece and they didn't know how to register their kids to school, how to create the school records, very quickly we organized the info sessions for parents, always with the support of NGOs and the support of NGOs on many levels, both on information and on interpretation. But we have also organized the trainings for teachers and social workers on what to expect when they have refugee children in their schools. As I mentioned before, we work closely with the communities of Athens. We identify their needs and organize the actions and activities and festivals with them, in collaboration with them. We also meet their practical needs when we identify them through private sponsors. We also work at the City of Athens on issues related to Greek citizenship. So we collaborate again with volunteers, and I mentioned, and you can see all this level of collaboration and how this works. We collaborate with volunteer groups on providing classes for people to be able to get to participate in the exams for the Greek citizenship with really, really good results. But also what we do is that we work beyond the limits of Athens through a collaboration between the City of Athens and the City of Thessaloniki. We now have a network of cities that work very closely on strengthening their local structures and supporting integration. This was an initiative of the City of Athens and the City of Thessaloniki. It started with more or less 10 municipalities, and now with this last local government, it has increased its membership, and now we have 26 municipalities all over Greece that collaborates at the political level and also at the technical level, connect together and exchange good practices. And again, at the national level, with the lead of Athens and Thessaloniki, we identify the needs as they change through the years. Needs for integration in the labor market, needs for strengthening local administrations and institutions inside a city, needs for support in terms of basic services like Greek language lessons or vocational training are things that cities prioritize. And through this collaboration, we managed to promote capacity building at local level. Through the city's network, we promote evidence-based policy making. Recently, not so recently, but one thing that we have been working on and we want to work further is to look at how mobility inside Greece can increase employment opportunities by giving incentives for people to leave urban areas and move to more rural areas in Greece to look for a new life and to look for employment. And to create, and what we would like to do in the future is to implement a pilot project that tests a successful relocation route from urban areas to rural areas. So this is something that we are currently working on, and we would really like to implement in the future. But also, and very importantly, what we do through the city's network of integration is that we work towards strengthening the role of local government institutions. A local government have the opportunity to engage with migrant and refugee-led fora and migrant and refugee formal communities. And this is something that through this collaboration with municipalities, we are really promoting at the moment through the city's network for integration. So to sum up, because I would like to close here and have the opportunity to discuss later on, I think that in the case of Athens, the fact that at a certain point Athens decided to open up and to listen to the expertise of UN organizations, to collaborate with UN organizations and local NGOs, as well as migrant and refugee communities, has been a very strong resilience factor that protected, let's say, the city from any changes in political will, and made it more resilient through capacity building in local administration and through this institutional memory that has been created over the years in Athens. So that's my contribution, and I'm happy to hear your questions and discuss.
Thank you very much, Fiona, for a very, very interesting presentation that is based on the policy. And I would say here that due to the proximity and subsidiarity, local government have a role to play. And here we could see something more. We could see this network, which does not usually happen to have these type of coordinating actions at local level, despite the initiatives to have a type of collaboration among local government. So thank you very much all for the contributions. I think all contributions provided material and also practices and experiences to be discussed, and I would be happy at this moment to open up the floor for questions from participants, comments, or anything else someone could raise. And the questions could be to any of the presenters or to all of them. And please feel free to ask whatever you want to raise and say in this discussion. Let's start. Who one is interested in raising questions or comments or anything else?
If I can, Yannis, so participants could use also the question and answer button, but of course we can always allow the microphone and the video if you want. But if possible, until people do that, I have a few questions for the different speakers.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really thankful for the presentations. They are very useful for the project, and you touch upon different very key initiatives and also points of discussions that are very useful in terms of how to link social integration, the migration topic, and resilience. So I have a question to Nora. Nora, your research perspective is very, very useful, and you talk about participatory designs, but also you talk a lot about how to work with volunteers. We have actually a lab which is working on climate resilience, actually on disasters, and they are working on managing the volunteering process. And I think with the Ukraine refugee situation in Europe, there were a lot of volunteers. So my questions to you is if you have any insight that you could share about how you manage this big group of volunteering that actually emerged spontaneously during the influx of people. And, sorry, Yannis.
Excuse me?
Yeah, can you mute? Okay, thank you. Then I have also a question for Lefteris, if because you talk about the resilience plans of Athens, and I've been there for the Urban Resilience Forum that took place 2 years ago in Athens, and they were presenting it. So my question is this resilience plan only talking about climate resilience, or how does it integrate other societal issues as part of the planning of resilience in Athens? And for Dionysia, I have a question. If you could maybe depict a bit better how you build these collaboration efforts in Athens, because this is actually very important as the topic of governance and cooperation for addressing different societal issues like migration is very relevant. So how do you set up a process of collaboration? How did it build up in your case? Of course, I may have other questions, but I don't want to take the floor for all. So, Ola, maybe one at a time.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your questions and for the insights on the other cases. I mean, especially with the second presentation, it resonated a lot because also in Germany, local governments talked so much about what is possible, what type of mayor or what type of local government essentially. And this will become even more important with the upcoming elections. Concerning the volunteers, so that was a big topic for those we worked with as well, because it wasn't always coordinated or there was collaboration. So it touches a little bit also on your question you posed to Dionysia in terms of what sort of governance mechanisms you have as a municipality or how to manage this. And what proved to be a best practice in cases we learned about is that you have a coordination force within local governments coordinate these volunteers. On the one hand, to receive information from the ground, because they have a lot of knowledge helping refugees or newcomers on what is needed and feeding that back to the different administrative units, but at the same time ensuring information flow the volunteers might need on terms of like what is available from the municipality, what could be used, how they could be supported in their efforts. And a few municipalities actually dedicated specific funds and rearranged a little bit to create these sometimes they were called volunteer service agencies or specific coordination roles. On the other hand, they were very aware that there is a risk of just relying on volunteers when they don't have the capacities to take over some of the functions they should have as local governments. And they were not always sure how to resolve it because it relates to capacity, time, and financial capacities. And the funds they're sometimes allocated from central government. Because in Germany, we do, compared to Greece, have a national integration policy, which comes with certain pots of money, obviously also certain rules and regulations. But yeah, there was also like, they can't be just a cheap replacement. So they were very wary of these sort of balancing act. That's what I can say from their perspective.
Coming back to your question, Matthias, the strategy of the resilience strategy of Athens was produced in the context of the participation of Athens in the 100 Resilient Cities Network. So it's not only on climate. It touches upon other societal issues, as you mentioned, yes. Challenges that the city faces. Of course, it's climate, how do you integrate nature into the city policies, but also how do you make the city more resilient in the context of communication, strengthening and empowering the people who work for the cities. How do the elected personnel, but also people who work for the administration, can operate with ease in the context of all these modern challenges? Because the city of Athens is a very big city. It's a very big system that is also very old. So how do you adapt to the modern reality? And also, how do you continue to keep the city relevant to the changes? I mean, tourism, the new ways of mobility, etc. So all of these points are present, of course, in the context of the period that it was voted, I mean, in 2018. So some points need to be adapted, I'm sure, but it's still valid. I mean, from what I saw, the initial version is still active. I would suggest to adapt it, but it's not on me to do. So I think it's Yes, it's an interesting document that needs to be updated, if you want, in the context of the post-COVID period, the increase of tourism, the increase of mobility, etc. So it is a document that concerns a number of issues and not only climate. Climate, of course, is the main point because everything links up and is connected to climate, but it calls for an adaptation to all modern challenges for a city like Athens.
Thanks, Matthias. You asked me how we set up this process of collaboration. I think that Lefteris can contribute because it was together that we set it up back at the time. It was not an easy process. There was skepticism at the beginning from many different sides. And indeed, the fact that we started with around 30 members and now we have over 70 is a proof that without advertising it, it was word of mouth. It's a proof that this is a mechanism that, despite the fact that definitely the refugee issue is not a priority at any level, the fact that all the different stakeholders find it useful to collaborate and to work closely together, both between them and with the local government, shows that it's a useful mechanism. The way we set it up is that we first identified the key actors that could have a leading role in the coordination mechanism, and these actors were mainly UN organizations that had both the knowledge and the capacity to do so. So identify leading actors, engage with migrant and refugee fora, and also create opportunities for these different stakeholders to come close together and work together. And I often use this example that Lefteris remembers very well. When the flows in Athens increased back in 2000, it was at some point in 2018, we created, we decided in Athens to create a preparedness mechanism in order for the city to be ready to deal efficiently with sudden flows in the city of refugees. At this, it was a 2-day workshop, and it was extremely interesting to see how in different tables, local administration, civil servants were talking with NGOs and UN organizations, and how this dialogue was extremely useful at that time and was preparing for the actual need of when the city would be in an emergency situation, because you had so many different ways of operating on the table being discussed, so many different ways of seeing things. Simple things like a civil servant would tell you, I cannot move one box from here to there if I don't have my superior's order, let's say. An NGO would be much more free, and UN organization would have a different role of advocacy, etc. So it was extremely useful through this exercise to bring all these different stakeholders together and prepare for the actual preparedness situation, the actual emergency situation. So yes, I would say that at the beginning, you need to identify the main actors that can help you set it up, and then slowly make sure that you are always you have your eyes open, because it's a integration, and anything that has to do with these populations is a constantly changing process that you need to adapt. You need to adapt in order to make a coordination mechanism meaningful at different times of as needs change.
Good, thank you very much for your response, and we can go on with other questions or comments? Is anyone that
There is
like
there is a
to
question in the chat.
in the chat? Okay.
Yeah, there
I
is.
didn't. Okay, I didn't see that, but okay, we can see.
It's going on the same direction of what we were
Yeah,
discussing.
yeah.
So the question is from
It is.
Ong, from the University of Urbino. It says to create inclusive policies on migration or societal resilience, governments and stakeholders collaborate and work harmoniously. So how can governments and communities collaborate to create inclusive policies? I think that goes a bit on the side of what Dionysia was explaining, but maybe we can also ask Nora to tell us a bit more about how the co-creation processes went in Germany.
Okay, so we can continue with this question. I think it goes to everyone. Is this something very specific? I don't think so. It is something you would like Nora to.
So the question was how we work co-creatively with the actors in the field.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a fully co-creative process, but I would say it was at least participatory in the sense that we identified local governments by either researching them because we thought they might be interested in this kind of project and have an interesting profile for us, or by circulating calls in different city networks, and then they proactively identified that they would be interested to participate. So that was the first step, that there was a kind of motivation. Then we would have a first sort of call and explain what we want to do and what our approach is, and ask in this first like scoping call sort of what sort of issues are they facing and what are they interested to exchange on, relating to issues around integration and resilience at a local level. And from there, we just started determining the agenda. So we didn't fully set it ourselves, but it was from their input. And then after a first workshop we had with them, we would again ask, okay, from this first results, what is sort of your idea? What is important next? So we try to have a lot of feedback loops, and also, I mean, fully co-creative would be that they would be writing up the report with us. That was not possible, you can imagine, with 11 local governments. But at least like we presented the analysis. So we also had a workshop towards the end where we presented our analysis, asked for feedback, complementary insights, then wrote the report, and then again reached out to them and they gave us feedback. So we tried to do it a little bit in tandem, really like with the results emerging from the ground, from their needs, and also topic-wise responding each time what they thought would be important. So it was a quite open process.
Yes, thank you. And Lefteris, would you like to comment on this?
Look, for us, it was a completely different process, because keep in mind that it was the first time that a city in Greece was called to participate in that type of management. But I mean, with the years passing, we participated in a number of projects, and we had the opportunity to exchange good practices. And one of the practices that we learned about was the collaborative process of decision making. We are not there yet, to be honest. In some areas of policy, I know that it happens. And in the context of the strategy that Dionysia talked about it, we did it a bit. But we also involved the city, which was also important, in processes that others were managing, which is also something useful, because, for example, the ACCMR came out of something like this. Initially, the city was participating in meetings of NGOs in the context of people coming into the city having no support, and in the initiative stages were just participating and watching and getting feedback. And at some point, we felt, I wouldn't say strong enough, but we felt competent enough to take over this meeting and propose to the NGOs that the city would coordinate this meeting and offer the possibility to use the capacity of the city for the NGOs. And then out of it, you have, out of this process, you have the Athens Coordination Center and everything else. So it was also a top-down and a bottom-up procedure, keeping in mind that we were very inexperienced. So we adapted to what was the reality back then. I'm not saying that I'm not in the city anymore, but I cannot imagine that we are experienced enough to do that. But there are processes that happened. Also, with a colleague of mine who was a vice mayor back then, using this approach, it has evolved a lot, I would say, from doing, not participating in these processes or not having any type of experience, now having, something that came out of it. So it is still very, very important. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Dionysia, based on your experience with streets on this.
Yes, I want to mention something that we are now promoting in the city of Athens is we make sure that everything that the city of Athens organizes, if there are working groups, for instance, irrespectively of the thematic area, if it is on disability, if it is on climate, everything, we make sure that the information reaches migrant and refugee communities in Athens, because it is not this isolation. We deal with migrant or refugee services, and we only talk about migrants and refugees in that context. Doesn't work. What you need to do is that you need to ensure that the communities are engaged in every single aspect of city life. So if there are working groups in the environment, we make sure that the information reaches the migrant and refugee fora that participate in the Migrant Integration Council of the City of Athens. If there is an event, and we have a recent example, on the 28th of January, we have invited the Special Advisor on Disabilities to discuss on events that will take place in Athens and to present these events to migrant refugee communities. Amongst them, there definitely are people with disabilities, and they should be included in these events. So it is really important to have this horizontal approach and not to discuss migrant refugee issues only in the context of social policies on migrant refugee issues. You need to open and have this horizontal approach and ensure, even though migrants and refugees, as Lefteris, I think, implied, they don't have the opportunity to vote at local government, at least they participate in working groups or events that the city organizes and have, in this respect, the opportunity to be part of the city life.
This practice, I think, it's very good because it's very simple, very practical, very clear, and also it could be applicable. So yes, it is a real example of a way of involving all refugees in what's going on in the environment they live. Asimina, you raised your hand. Are you still interested for question?
Yes, I did. Just one quick question. First of all, on behalf of the Regional Development Institute, I would like to thank the invited speakers and all participants for joining, and all the insights that were exchanged here were very interesting. My question would be, well, there are many limitations, but is there a view or a vision or a future plan for creating networks between local communities or cities beyond borders in terms of a transnational civil society that would actually affect European policy on these issues, migration issues, social policy, etc.? Thank you very much.
Okay, then we can follow the same Nora, starting from Nora.
Well, there are definitely several networks for cities organized. I mean, there are sanctuary cities, safe harbors, there are different European, also national networks in Germany. And they are, like, at least the cities we work, because they have a pro-migration stand, are active in these networks. I think a transnational civil society is probably a different thing. I haven't heard of a network myself because it's probably much more compartmentalized how to coordinate transnationally, but maybe the others who are more on the ground have more insights on that one.
Lefteris?
Yeah, sorry, Asmina, can you repeat, because I've lost a bit the initial part of the question.
Well, the idea is whether these networks between cities to deal with all these issues, migration issues, social issues, can be organized not only within countries, but beyond countries in the context of a transnational civil society, so that they could shape European policies in this direction, in this area. Thank you very much.
It already exists in a way. If you look closely on the number of network of cities that exist around the world, at some point when I was involved, a mayor spoke about 300 plus city networks that exist around the globe on various issues, from regional development to migration to economic development to health, in climate, etc., etc. So these city networks exist. What we are looking now, at least back then, a few years ago, it was the idea of network of networks. Just because we have a lot of networks, now we are thinking about network of networks, or how to change the focus and invest in networks that are more efficient or could be more, could fulfill their role better. So I can speak about the networks that Athens participated back then. One very important network is the Eurocities network, which is a city network, usually mainly from European cities, but I know that they expanded a bit, talking to cities in the States, etc. So you can see a cross-border approach in this context, and trying to promote the role of cities in the context of a number of issues. It's not only migration. Migration was a small part, but on, I don't know, changing EU policy, social affairs. There is a social affairs forum, economic development, etc., etc. So, and it had more than 135 members, big and small cities. Then you have the UCLG, which is the United Cities Local Governments Network, that has thousands of members. It's the biggest city network in the world, I think, and it deals with all issues concerning cities, local authorities, regions. So it's a very big mix, and it concerns the global scene. So UCLG has a very strong presence only because of its numbers, not only, but mainly because of its numbers, and then the intervention that they do. Then you have smaller and more strategic approaches like the Mayor's Migration Council, where you have some very important mayors that created a council and they intervene in the global debate around migration and climate. So yes, we can imagine having this type of networks intervening and changing policy, depending also, it is important to have figures, political figures. Is it good to invest in personalities, or do we need a more inclusive approach with numbers? It's a question of choice. I mean, and how strategically operate, how these type of networks operate strategically. So you see very big networks, but also very small that have a very specific approach. So it depends. I'm not sure that I have the one answer to all of this, to this big question, but they already exist. The way they operate It depends on the issue. It depends on what type of cities participate. If you have smaller cities, it is understandable that they will have less impact. If you have a network where big cities are involved, for example, I can give one specific one that goes over the network approach. During the discussion on the global compacts on migration and on the compact for refugees, you had the parallel action from cities. Some cities signed the global compact for refugees instead of the countries. I mean, remember, for the people who remember back then, the United States didn't sign the Global Compact for Refugees. It was under the Trump administration, and they didn't want to participate. But a few big American cities signed the Global Compact, like New York, who else? Atlanta, Los Angeles, etc. And then you had a network that came out of it, and of cities that signed the Global Compact for Refugees, and they did a political stand. They took a political position. So you have there also ad hoc processes that are very useful with a big impact. Unfortunately, the discussion around the question of refugees and migration took a very wrong turn, if you want my opinion, and we should bring it back. But it is an example of how cities can impact national and international policy.
Okay, thank you. Dionysia?
Yes, Asimina, I think you mentioned European networks of, apart from the cities networks that Lefteris mentioned, of civil society. There is the European Migration Forum, which is a platform that has been established by the European Commission in cooperation with the European Economic and Social Committee. And on a yearly basis, this European Migration Forum meets, and it's a platform where civil society organizations and European institutions meet to discuss specifically migration, asylum, and integration issues of migrants and refugees. The forum is attended by European and national NGOs, representatives from the EU, and local and regional authorities. This year I went to Brussels to attend this. The discussion was specifically on the European Pact on Migration. But of course, because you asked whether they have the opportunity, these types of platforms have the opportunity to let's say, to influence European policies. The European Pact of Migration was already decided, let's say. So it was mainly a meeting where NGOs listened to they were provided with information on what the pact is about. And they were asked about their feedback, giving feedback on good practices, on how basically the main axis of the pact could be best implemented. So NGOs were not involved in the decision process of the Pact on Migration. However, they were asked to provide feedback at a later stage, which I think that being there as a local government representative, I could feel that provided, there was a lot of frustration amongst NGOs regarding that. So yes, I mean, officially, this is the main platform where NGOs can meet and discuss, and it was very interesting to be together with other, with NGOs and hear the viewpoint and meet people. But in terms of influencing policy, this was not the case. It was mainly, giving feedback on how to best implement something that was already decided.
Okay, so thank you, Dionysia, very much. We are about to close, but is there anything else? Maybe I haven't seen any other hand raised. However, we are in the time frame we had allocated for this meeting. If I were allowed to provide a summary, not conclusions, of course, a summary of the discussion, I would say that my impression is that This interaction was very useful, provided very interesting insights from people that are engaged in the implementation of refugee policies in order to create or to support social integration and make societies more resilient. I have put it down some issues. I think the support of employability could be a very interesting issue because this creates bonds with the localities and the economy and society. So in this respect, the employment seems to be a very important issue, and it could be a mutual beneficiary for all parties, the local economy and the refugees as well. And also you highlighted schools and education. It seems that these are again mechanisms for integrating people, refugees in the locality. And another issue, the third issue, has to do with the coordination of policies. This comes again and again in these discussions, and Lefteris mentioned that we would like a network for the network. Jesop has named Lefteris that we need a government for the governance. I mean, we need a way of organizing the governance, and of course it is not taken for granted. However, it made me think what you mentioned, that although initially governance has been termed as something by Rhodes that's governing without government, Jesop has now concluded that we need a government for the governance in order to see how complex it is to organize all these different stakeholders. And finally, regarding the issue of refugees, what it made me think is an interesting book by Duflo, Good Economics for Hard Times, where the issue of migration is very central in the discussion, and this means that the discussion we raised today has a universal perspective. It's not, it's of course, it has to do with the peculiarities of each case we are discussing. However, today this is one of the most challenges issues in our times, and in this respect, Lefteris, I understand very well how the political position, how important the political position is, because also this affects a lot policies and also patterns of governing and things like that. So I think we open more issues than we conclude with the questions. But I think this is a measure of a good discussion, to be fruitful. Thank you very much. Matthias, you would like to say something just for saying goodbye or something like that?
Maybe we can just thank all the participants for staying with us through all the discussion, and also for the speakers. That was very, really enriching discussion, touching about different topics. I endorse all the comments of Yanis. Very interesting, and well, I hope that it was also a good learning for our labs and also for the wider public that may have joined or may see this webinar in recordings afterwards.
Okay. Thank you very much. We are closing now. Thank you, the participants and also the invited speakers. We'll meet in the next occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye
you.
to all
Have
of
a
you.
nice day.
Bye.
Goodbye to all of you.